What happens if you have to make an equation for a line, which again we already know is y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. But they don't give you the y-intercept at all. So for example, I'm told that I want to make the equation for a line given the points 1 comma 2 and 3 comma 4. Well, that doesn't help me at all. I can't just throw these into this equation because I don't have my y-intercept. Can I? Well, there are two different ways of going about this problem. I'm going to show you a way that Alex uses in order to show you it, which is fairly easy, but I'll also show you a way that will be useful for both Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, a lot of different courses. So, first, let's do the Alex way. We know that we need both our slope and our y-intercept. Slope we can find, so let's find that. My slope will just be my y subtracted and my x subtracted. Awesome. So I have a slope of 1. Knowing that, I can start to fill out my equation. Y equals 1x plus b. Well, if I'm looking for this b, I know an x or a y. It's either these two or these two. So I can take one of my points and plug it into the equation. So let's just say I'll do both of them because I'm going to do extra work anyway. So we have 1 comma 2 and 3 comma 4. So let's do it. So I have my y is 4 equals 1 times my x plus b. In the same way, I'd have my y is 2 equals 1 times my x plus b. No matter which one I solve, I should get the same exact number. So typically speaking, you could just pick and choose your favorite numbers that may or may not make your life easier. So I'll start with this side. I'll have 2 equals, well, 1 times 1 is just 1 plus b. Subtract 1 from both sides, and I have 1 equals my y-intercept. I have 4 equals 3 plus b. Subtract 3 from both sides, and 1 should equal my y-intercept. What do you know? It should be 1. So my equation should become y equals 1x and then plus 1. Now, to be fair, you won't always get easy whole numbers like this. A lot of times you might even get fractions, and that's okay. So I'm going to show you an alternate method in which to solve for this using the same exact numbers. We already established that my slope is 1. And I have my points 1, 2, and 3, 4. Because they're smaller, I'm going to use this point. There is an equation, which we call, because we're so creative, point slope form. And as the name suggests, you use it when you have one point and the slope in order to find your equation. And here's how it looks. Y minus y1 equals the slope times your x minus x1. Your y and your x will stay the same. The x1 and the y1 are what point you're using, and your m is your slope. So in this case, I would have y minus my y of 2 equals my slope of 1 times x minus my x of 1. And now I'm just going to solve for y. First things first, I'm going to use my PEMDAS to get rid of these parentheses by distributing the 1 to everything. So I should have y minus 2 equals 1x minus, well, 1 times 1 is just 1. Then I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And I'll have y equals 1x plus 1. And what do you know? In this equation, my slope is 1 and my y-intercept is 1, just like we found before. Point slope form you'll be using a lot more often in future courses, so getting used to it now is more beneficial. But using the slope intercept form is just as valid. I'll show one more example with harder numbers and point slope form, and then that'll be it. So let's just say I have a slope of 3/2 and a point of 7/5. So I'll have y minus the 5 equals my slope of 3/2 times my x minus my x. Well, do the process. Y minus 5 equals 3/2 times x minus 3/2 times 7. So this becomes y minus 5 equals 3/2 x minus 3 times 7 is 21. 2 times 1 is 2. And I'll add 5 to both sides. So I have y equals 3/2, 3/2 x. Now, I have a negative 21/2 plus 5. In order to do this properly, I need to go ahead and convert my 5 into halves. Well, I know that 1 times 2 equals 2, so 5 times 2 is 10. So 5 is the same thing as 10/2. And I'm adding that to negative 21/2. My bigger number is 21, so I keep the negative sign and do big minus small. And I'll have negative 11/2, which means my equation becomes y equals 3/2 x minus 11/2. If you thought that the other form was easier, let's use that. So I have y equals mx plus b. So I have 5 equals 21/2 plus b. Subtract 21/2 on both sides. And I'll have my y-intercept equals 5 minus 21/2. Well, as we discussed before, 5 is just 10/2, which is again negative 11/2. Which means my equation would become y equals 3/2 x minus 11/2. So for point slope form, should you choose to use it, you'll need at least your slope and a point. And if you don't have your slope, you only need 2 points. And that's it.